Wanted to address some of the most recent comments we've had concerning the black fatigue, and not necessarily the topic, but the responses. And I'm also getting some other responses on some other videos, so I'm just going to kind of package them all in. There was one particular response from, I'm assuming, a person of Irish descent. And that person was saying, Irish people, to summarize it, have been treated poorly in this country, and we don't XYZ, implying that black people complain or hold a grudge or whatever. Now, number one, he can't speak for all Irish people, just like I never try to speak for all black people. I am making a historical statement that is backed up by evidence. It is what it is. But if you if you're going to compare an outcome or a dynamic between races, you have to have some data to support it and also context. What one group does within its group has nothing, is completely different than what one group does to another group. That's two different dynamics. Irish people have had a a rough history in the United States, especially in the early formings of the colonies and 18th and 19th century America. No doubt. Did they have the same? No, not as black people. Irish people were treated poorly. The Africans that were brought over here and the blacks that were brought through slave farms or breeded through slave farms were commodified. There is no place in social or cultural history that another group has been commodified on a broad scale, on a political scale, on a governmental scale, on a cultural scale. There are individual circumstances, but we're talking on a large scale, a North American scale, a United States government scale. That is on a British government scale. That has never happened in human history. So people saying everybody was a victim of slavery, everyone was not a victim of the same type of slavery. That is just not true. There's not one type of slavery. The slavery that occurred in the Caribbean and South America is not the same type of slavery that occurred in North America. So before you begin to speak about slavery, have some kind of information that supports what you're saying. Do some research. Don't just say, oh, slavery existed for a long time. There are different types of slavery. Just like there are different types of capitalism, there's different types of government. It is not the same. Okay? There was another response that said if black people, if the response was along the lines of, I have to learn how to bring up the statements so I can read them off, but if black people would stop being violent in their community, people wouldn't treat them in a bad way, or police wouldn't treat them in a bad way. And I said, okay, so you're going to look at what black people are doing in their community, but you're not looking at the 200 years of misogyny in this country because women couldn't participate in government until 1920. That wasn't black folks. The reneging on the British agreement that started the Revolutionary War, that wasn't black folks. The genocide of Native Americans, that wasn't black folks. The Indian assimilation schools, that wasn't black folks. The Depression, that wasn't black folks. School shootings, rarely black folks. Serial killers, rarely black folks. So, as a non person of color, if you're going to point out what's happening in the black community, be aware of what's going on in the community to which you belong, because you really cannot hold a moral lens if we're talking about white and black. A moral lens is probably not the best argument if you're aware of what has occurred in American history. Just because something is about race does not make it racist. Okay? You can have a racial preference without being a bigot. A racist only means my group first. That's it. Which is really, in and of itself, not a problem. The extent to which you are willing to go to make your race first is where it becomes questionable. Are you willing to hurt and harm and set up systems to stop people so your race will be first? Now we're getting toward racism, because now we're getting toward bigotry. If by virtue of the difference you find superiority and inferiority, that's bigotry. So I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to compare and contrast the Italian experience against the black experience, the Irish experience against black people, immigrant experience against black people. But you have to remember, when we're talking about immigrants, an immigrant is a person who came here from somewhere else willingly. Only black people came here as imports. That's a fact. So please continue to comment. I'm going to challenge you with facts and not passion. Passion is not going to work on this channel. I'm not going to insulting my education or even questioning my education. How does that affect my world? What does that have to do with the video? What that says is, when you begin to comment on what my education may or may not be, or where it came from, or anything like that, that says I disagree emotionally with your topic, but I don't have the information to debate it. Because I am really looking for a quality conversation to explain to me how any non African or African American or black person could have a basic high school level understanding of American history and have fatigue of black people but not of the group that has been leading the helm on the worst atrocities of this nation. I would like to have a conversation, not a comment, but I would really like to have a conversation. And I promise you, this is not to make anybody look bad. This is really to create an avenue of understanding so I can process this, because it doesn't make sense to me. You have to ignore a lot of American history to befall your dislike on immigration, to befall your dislike on people of African descent, to befall your aggression toward people with alternative lifestyles. So please continue to comment. Have some type of information to support whatever you're saying.